Hello, I'm Darryl Morris. This is TalkTV, live tonight from the Talk Radio studio. Tell you what, it's been a heck of a year this week in American politics. Lots and lots going on. The January 6th committee continues to hear testimony of what was happening, or more to the point, not happening, when it comes to Donald Trump condemning those people attacking the Capitol on the 6th of January. Also this week, a US jury has found one of Donald Trump's closest allies during that time. They've had a rocky relationship since, but Steve Bannon in contempt of Congress in his relationship to that committee. And just to throw a bit more drama into the mix, Joe Biden got COVID. Let's catch up with that and everything else we need to know from the States. Anna Mancuso is a political analyst and a national spokeswoman for Renew America and joins us now. Anna, hello there.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, really, really well. Thank you for being with us on TalkTV. Really appreciate it. Let's start, as I think we probably should, with the January 6th committee. A big day on Thursday, Anna, where we got a little bit more context, a bit more insight into what was happening in the White House, in Team Trump and Trump himself, what his sort of conduct was like during that attack.
It was absolutely just damning, to be honest. Now, the January 6th committee, as we've had to remind Americans here at home, as well as over in England, I'm sure you guys are having similar conversations. The January 6th committee's main goal is to get to the truth and to present the facts. They cannot bring any charges that will be Merrick Garland's job in Department of Justice. So we've been learning a lot. And that's what we were hoping to find out with these hearings. It's just unfortunate that so much of the truth that's coming out is just really shocking, from these Secret Service text messages to them calling their family to say goodbye that were guarding Vice President Mike Pence, to Trump's inaction, his 8-minute call with Rudy Giuliani. It was just absolutely crazy, and nobody could have imagined that this is what we were going to uncover in these hearings.
Okay, let's just break some of those bits down, Anna. What and particularly, let's start perhaps with the texts that the committee saw this week. What did they say?
Well, the text messages were between the Secret Service agents, and they've actually since been deleted, which is even more crazier than the actual text messages themselves. And they're saying that they can't actually be retrieved, which has a lot of people wondering why not. You know, just because you delete a text message, you should be able to retrieve it. So now we're trying to figure out that angle. And Secret Service was, in fact, some of them were wanting to help protect Trump, which now a lot of people are saying we're not shocked that Pence didn't get in the vehicle when he was asked to by a Secret Service detail, because God only knows what would have happened.
I see. And Trump's movements, or lack thereof, really, in the White House during the attack. We've learned more about what he was, almost to the point, wasn't doing.
He was not doing anything. You know, he was asked to send out a tweet, to send out a message. They didn't want him to go to the press briefing room because they didn't want him to possibly stir up even more problems that were happening. We know that his daughter did send a tweet and then deleted it later, like immediately right after she sent it. We know that eventually they got him, after enough cajoling, they got him to the Rose Garden to actually give an address, and he called them fine people and told them that everybody loved them and they needed to go home. And that is not how you handle extremism in America, unless, of course, you're Donald Trump, which is why America is bracing itself for him to make an announcement that he will be running for the 2024 presidential election.
We'll come on to that as well in a minute, Anna, because I think that he was at a rally, wasn't he, this week, roughly around the same time that his former Vice President Mike Pence was as well. He's also lining himself up for a run in 2024. I guess we also got a sense that those around Donald Trump, in particular, I think his daughter, Ivanka, were trying to put a bit of pressure on him to play this differently. Is that fair?
I would say that is fair. Unfortunately, it didn't take. You know, he was being super stubborn and didn't want to do anything, and just it was moved to inaction. And he's still, you know, we're in 2022 and he still hasn't conceded to the 2020 presidential election, which he lost. So if that gives you any insight into the man of Donald Trump, there you have it.
Take us into his phone call with Rudy Giuliani. 8 minutes on the phone with one of his counsel.
8 minutes of Rudy Giuliani most likely telling him not to concede and to allow it to continue. But who really knows, to be completely honest? We do know that on election night, Rudy Giuliani was in former President Trump's ear telling him that he should not concede the election, that it was still his, and that he could, in fact, win this election. When the truth of the matter was, he could not win and did not.
A US jury has found Steve Bannon guilty. This is a connected story. Steve Bannon, of course, one of Donald Trump's sort of closest allies in his early administration and leading him into politics. 2 counts of contempt of Congress, Anna. What happened there?
So he was subpoenaed to come before the January 6th committee, and he just didn't show up, much like Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, who also didn't show up. Now, this is the first trial that we've seen, and Steve Bannon was convicted, as you mentioned, on Friday. He will face sentencing up to 2 years in prison in October. He will go before to get a sentencing, but he was already hitting the talk show network that evening after he had been found guilty on Friday. He was on Tucker Carlson, and he was saying that if he goes to prison, he goes to prison. But he's really missing the point of all of this. The fact was he was subpoenaed to the January 6th committee to give a deposition. He didn't show up, and nobody at any point in this is above the law. And I think that's very important to point out here, that anyone coming before the January 6th committee that's subpoenaed needs to show up, because not even Donald Trump himself is above the law.
What would they have asked him?
Probably, what were you doing? Why were you helping Donald Trump? Were you helping him? They need to get to the bottom of how far this really goes. Now, it is important to point out that Steve Bannon was not in the administration upon January 6th. He had already previously left as the chief political strategist. Nevertheless, though, he did continue to have the president's ear. He was also stoking extremism and all sorts of craziness on his war room that he is always hosting in the afternoons. So I think there's going to be a lot of culpability coming down Steve Bannon's way, and rightfully so.
Okay, all the while, Mariana, Donald Trump and Mike Pence were both holding rallies in Arizona. I think both of them were in Arizona, weren't they? In the last couple of days, rallies for other people, not necessarily their own rallies. They were speaking on behalf of other candidates, but this is really significant. And my first question around that, Mariana, is what are these revelations? And these are stark revelations, doing to the image of Donald Trump in America?
I wish they were doing something, but the fact of the matter is that the Republicans that are hearing what happened on January 6th, what President Trump at the time allowed to take place, would in fact support him if he runs in 2024. And if that isn't astonishing, I don't know what is in American politics these days. Now, we do know that his Vice President, Mike Pence, is looking at eyeing for a run in 24. But again, he hasn't officially declared. But as you mentioned, he is hitting the rallies for candidates, which is telling me that he's trying to see if there's a path to victory for him. And he did say that if Trump runs, that's not going to dissuade him from running himself.
Okay, hold that thought. We'll get more on that in a sec, because that is fascinating, isn't it? What a fascinating dynamic that is. Oh boy. Okay, the Republican base, those who have been supportive of Donald Trump, I think they've already suspended reality, haven't they? So the idea that it's not moving the dial on them is no surprise. What about the general population? Is the dial moving at all in the general population with these revelations?
I wish I could say that it is, but it doesn't seem that way. There is a massive part of the American population that's dying for something different. They don't want either party, and they're looking for something. They want some type of viability, but they don't feel like they're being heard in American politics. And if we have Trump on the ballot in 2024, first of all, it is going to be a bloodbath between Republicans, because there's two viable candidates right now. You have the Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump. And in 24, that is what it's going to come down to. Other candidates that are looking to jump in the ring on the Republican ticket, they don't have quite as a narrow path to victory as those two candidates themselves. Meanwhile, on the Democrat side, Joe Biden is losing a lot of confidence from his own party, which you guys know a little bit about, having dealt with Boris Johnson most recently in 10 Downing Street. And I will tell you that in American history, there's only been one president who's not received the nomination from his party in his reelection efforts, and that was Franklin Pierce a long time ago.
Right, I see. And I suppose we'll come back to that as well, actually, because I suppose a lot of that depends on on whether Joe Biden feels he can continue. Let's just consider the issue around Donald Trump as well for a moment more, because. And you talk about, America sort of, being hungry for something else. You almost get the sense that we're a third candidate, a good, viable, well-oiled machine of a third candidate to stand in 2024. They may have a better chance than we've seen previously with a third-way candidate, who tend to, of course, fall down the gap. Donald Trump is the outsider. He has been the outsider. He won on being the outsider, didn't he? In spite of the fact that he's not really the outsider at all. That's it was the crux always of his argument. Then he became president, and now he sort of, effectively sort of owns the Republican Party. And we see this happen quite a lot, don't we? That those sort of outsider candidates. Macron is a really good example in France, who won in 2017 as the outsider candidate and has now very much become the establishment, and people gave him a kick in earlier this year as an establishment figure. Is there any sign that Donald Trump is at any point going to be viewed as being part of the establishment?
Not at all. I mean, look, the Republicans love Donald Trump. It's all hail Donald Trump. The Republican National Committee is paying for his legal fees as he goes through all of these things that are happening with him. And it's astounding to me at the fact that they have drank the Kool-Aid this far that they will not look for other people. Because I'm telling you, if this had been any other point in our history and some candidate was doing these things and some former president was acting in this manner, never would have stood a chance.
And what are Mike Pence's prospects?
Mike Pence is going to have, look, he has a tough battle, right? He was there, they were calling for him to be hanged on January 6th. He's the former vice president. Now he wants to run for president. And he only stood up to the president finally when it came to certifying the election results. But for the previous 4 years while he was in office, he was literally a doormat to the president.
There was a quote, I think, that Mike Pence tweeted. He didn't at the rally, as far as I understand it. I don't think he actually referenced Trump, did he? And certainly didn't criticise the January 6th events. But there was a tweet from him afterwards, later in the day, that said, "If the Republican Party allows itself to become consumed by yesterday's grievances, we will lose," he says. That's an interesting tact, isn't it? But he's a very interesting person, isn't he? In so much as he was a Trump ally, very much attached to Donald Trump, liked for all intents and purposes for the majority of the administration by Trump's base, and then of course that major departure on the 6th of January, and now sort of setting himself up as perhaps somebody who can sort of who has Trump credentials, as it were, stood by Trump during that administration, was part of the Trump process, but has that key line that if the Republican Party gets held up on the election in 2020, will just continue to lose. It feels like it's a narrow path, but is it a path? Is there a path through Mike Pence on that point?
Mike Pence would have to go through Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, to be quite frank with you. I mean, Ron DeSantis is the favorite if Trump doesn't win, and Mike Pence is, not a lot of people are really lining up behind Mike Pence right about now. And he won't be another vice president because we wouldn't do that necessarily, but it will be an uphill battle for the former vice president, no doubt.
So on that argument, though, that argument that says, you don't believe that the 2020 election was won fairly. You still believe that. You're still committed to that point. But if we continue to have that fight, we're going to lose, and so we need to suspend it and suspend with it, really, Donald Trump. Is there any room for that argument in the Republican Party?
I wish there were, but it seems like it's getting smaller by the day, to be quite blunt with you. I mean, look at this. Marjorie Taylor Greene is a congresswoman out of Georgia, and she is extremist to the core. Her and Lauren Boebert out of Colorado, the same thing in the House Representatives. And at the end of the day, the Republicans are allowing extremism to live and thrive under its party banner. They're not ousting them. And it's astonishing. As somebody that's been in Republican politics before I left the party for over a decade, I can tell you right now that I've never seen the Republican Party look this embarrassing.
What sort of conversations are you having with your former Republican supporters and colleagues?
The conversations go like this. What happened to the party? I had to leave the party. And ultimately it's no, I didn't leave the party. The party left me because moderate Republicans don't have a place in the GOP any longer. They're being pushed out. They're being called rhinos, Republican in name only. But the fact of the matter, they're not. They've always been Republicans. The extremists that are living under the party banner now have hijacked the Republican Party. And they've given it to Donald Trump, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to carry that man's water as long as he continues to be this party figurehead. And we can't figure out for why.
Let's talk about Joe Biden then for a moment, who's got COVID. Mariana, what do we know about his condition?
He seems to be on the mend, which is fantastic. And I do want to point out that Donald Trump also had COVID while in the White House. And while he went to the hospital, Joe Biden has continued to lead the nation. So when we talk about both of them in contrast to a possible 2024 run, they always take jabs at Biden. They're like, he's old, he's slow, he's this, he's that. Last time I checked, Joe Biden seems to be leading the nation while having COVID, which I think that, to me, deserves a standing ovation. He's on the mend, and we're happy to see it, and I hope that the president gets well soon. And
let's just briefly for a moment consider 2024 then, because we're creeping ever closer, and it'll be here before you know it. Is it realistic, Mariana, from your perspective, that he is on the ballot in 2024?
Joe Biden?
Yeah.
Right about now, yes, I would say that it is realistic to see the president of the United States run for re-election as another 4 years. And he has been asked, actually, he was asked over at an overseas trip if he was going, what would happen if you ran against Donald Trump in 2024? And he told the press in no uncertain terms that he would love that matchup again. He's not afraid to go up against Donald Trump because he beat him once and he can beat him again.
It's remarkable, isn't it? Just the prospect of us having another run of Trump versus Biden just feels extraordinary.
Deja vu?
Yeah, deja vu, yeah. Or more like horrible nightmare, probably. Yeah. the deja vu. Okay, Mariana, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time and your analysis and your insights tonight from the States on that. Thank you. We'll do it again soon, hopefully. On Talk TV tonight, Mary Anna Mancuso, who is a political analyst and a national spokesperson for the Renew America project. Okay, coming up before 4 this morning, we're going to head to New Zealand. We'll get some insight from that part of the world where Omicron continues to surge. The health system is reaching a crisis point at the moment, and there has been some criticism of the political response to it as well. Omicron hitting really, really hard. Also, of course, dealing with the inflation high, 32-year high in inflation, and some wild weather. All sounds quite familiar, doesn't it, to be honest with you? That wild weather, high inflation, and coronavirus still circling at a rapid rate. All on the other side of the world. So we'll head to New Zealand for that before 4. Also, don't forget, from 6 o'clock on Tuesday, your chance to hear from the 2 candidates vying to be your Prime Minister. You might not necessarily have a vote, but on Tuesday, you'll have the chance to hear them and hear what they've got to say for themselves, which is really important. I mean, holding them to account, you holding them to account, you hearing who they are and what they're about is really important, really, really important, whether you've got a vote or not. We're hearing a lot in the last couple of days of policy pledges, tax cut pledges, spending pledges, pledges to rip up regulations, to fund the NHS, to solve backlogs, all that sort of stuff. A lot of it red meat for the Tory party. It does seem to be that we are all now, as a country, going to spend the next 6 weeks living through a Tory psychodrama, where and you suspect that it will become more and more extreme over the next 6 weeks, particularly as the polls reflect the mood within the party. At the moment, Rishi Sunak, the one with the ground to make up on Liz Truss, but Liz Truss will want to continue to edge ahead. And so there's an incentive for both of them to throw red meat at the Tory party, and for both of them to become more extreme, for both of them to become to be more drastic in their pledges and their promises, which is kind of what's led us to where we are now, I suppose, hasn't it? So it'll be really interesting to see what they've got to say for themselves on Tuesday night and over the next couple of weeks. But Tuesday is the one to keep your eye on for now. 6 o'clock on Talk TV. The Showdown, the Sun's Showdown, the fight for number 10, live on Talk TV. The Sun's Harry Cole and Talk TV's political editor Kate McCann will be questioning the 2 candidates, Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss. Over the next couple of days, by the way, you're very welcome to let us know what you want to hear. If you want a question, if you've got a particular issue or thing that you are really concerned about. We had a cracking conversation about that last weekend, didn't we? Where we simply said, what do you want from your new Prime Minister? And the list was extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. Their in tray looks terrifyingly large on day one as they become Prime Minister. Almost all of the things that you were calling us about, none of them really reflected in what they were actually talking about, what they were actually offering to the membership, which gives you a bit of a sense, I guess, of the gaping gap between the membership and the public. Even though we hear lots of people talk about them not being that different, that actually the membership of the Tory party are as concerned about the same things that you're concerned about, that might be true. And does that lead us then to suspect that the candidates, that Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, are actually misjudging this a little bit? That they're throwing red meat at an electorate around things about, regulation cuts and tax cuts, and all they really want to know is how are you going to deal with the cost of living crisis? How are you going to make parsnips and fuel affordable in the next 6 months? That's an interesting point, isn't it? That might be an interesting first question. Are you out of touch with party and country? 6 o'clock, Tuesday night. That's the date for your diary. 6 p.m. Tuesday, Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss head-to-head in a leadership debate on Talk TV. Stick it in your phone, stick it in your diary, tattoo it across your forehead. You're going to want to be here for this. 6 o'clock, Tuesday on Talk TV, Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak in a battle to be your next Prime Minister live on Talk TV. And next we'll head to New Zealand. A lot of those problems, a lot of those issues that are going to be on their in their in tray come September are very much in Jacinda Ardern's in tray as well in New Zealand. Lydia Beartham is in that part of the world for us and can put some context to that. We'll be live to New Zealand on Talk TV next.